News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Amy Morris. There's your closing bell for this Monday on Wall Street, where a rebound in big tech drove stocks higher after a slide that was driven by weak manufacturing, trade, and geopolitical risks. We bring you the closing numbers each day here at Bloomberg. After a day full of red, it is now green across the screen. The S&P 500 gained 24 points. NASDAQ gained 129 points. The Dow gained 36 points. The 10-year Treasury yield at 4.44%. The 2-year yield at 3.93%. President Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping are likely to speak this week. That's according to the White House. The two leaders have not spoken since January, before Trump's inauguration, and the call is seen as a potential way to resolve trade differences between the nations. Now, speaking of trade, the EU is preparing for trade talks with the U.S. and warns of retaliatory measures if President Trump follows through on his tariff threats. The president wants to double the tariff on imported steel. Brendan Ferris of the Steel Manufacturers Association tells Bloomberg that the previous 25% tariff was not as effective as hoped.
Bumping up the number to 50% is going to be very helpful for our industry. China, over the last year, has dumped more than 100 million tons into the global market. That is more than we make in the U.S. in a year.
You can hear that entire interview with Brendan Ferris of the Steel Manufacturers Association by downloading the Bloomberg Intelligence podcast. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says getting the EU to the table at all is progress.
The European Union came to the table thanks to President Trump's threat of tariffs, and now we are seeing that they are negotiating in good faith with our delegation. So we remain hopeful and optimistic that a deal can be struck.
The EU's trade chief will meet with the U.S. trade representative in Paris, and a team from the Commission is heading to Washington for technical talks with the deadline of July 9th to reach a mutually acceptable solution. Now, Dallas Fed President Lori Logan says the U.S. Central Bank can remain patient as it assesses risks to both inflation and unemployment.
We're seeing risks on both sides of our dual mandate that appear fairly balanced. That leaves us well positioned, I think, to wait for the data, to be patient. And then if we get significant information that really changes the outlook on the balance of risks, we'll be prepared to respond.
Lori Logan speaking at a banking conference hosted by the Dallas Fed. Chicago Fed President Austin Goolsbee reiterating the economy does look good underneath the surface, as the Fed is being careful, emphasizing rising risks to their inflation and employment mandates from President Trump's tariffs.
I would say surprisingly little direct impact so far in the data that's coming out, but with the question mark, we don't know if that will remain true in the next month or two.
Chicago Fed President Austin Goolsbee participating in a moderated discussion in Davenport, Iowa. Investors expect policymakers to keep borrowing costs unchanged when they meet later this month in Washington. Russia and Ukraine concluded their latest direct peace talks in Istanbul. Lasted little more than an hour, the two sides exchanging documents and preparing for another prisoner exchange. They also agreed to swap 6,000 bodies of soldiers killed in action. They did not come closer to a peace deal. Ukraine Defense Minister Rustem Umerov led the Ukrainian delegation.
We've been telling Russia for a very long time, this war must end. And the whole world supports us in that.
Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky.
They exchanged documents through the Turkish side, and we are preparing a new release of prisoners of the war.
Despite months of high-profile efforts, prospects for peace remain distant. The man accused of an attack in Boulder, Colorado, has been criminally charged. Mohammed Sabri Solomon was charged with a hate crime after the attack against a rally in support of Israeli hostages. 8 people were hurt. President Trump says he'll work to have Solomon removed from the U.S. He faces up to 10 years in prison. The Supreme Court has declined to consider challenges to a Maryland ban on assault weapons and a Rhode Island prohibition on high-capacity magazines. That leaves intact federal appeals court decisions that back the bans. The Supreme Court has steered clear of new Second Amendment cases since upholding a federal gun ban for people under domestic violence orders in June. Morgan Stanley is shopping a $5 billion debt package for Elon Musk's artificial intelligence company, xAI Corp. According to a person familiar with the matter, the proceeds will go toward general corporate purposes. Commitments are due June 17th. Disney is laying off several hundred employees across its film and TV businesses. The company says the staff reduction started today. They're falling on employees in marketing, publicity, casting, and development, along with corporate financial operations. Shares of Disney, little changed. That's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg.